Hello, everybody. This is Pascal from Neutrality Studies, and today I'm talking again to Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, a retired U.S. Army officer, former Chief of Staff of the Secretary of State, and a member of the activist group Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. Colonel Wilkerson, welcome back.
Good to be with you. I'm also more now a member of the Eisenhower Media Network than anything else, but I just throw that out there for advertisement for EMN.
That's very good. Actually, what is the Eisenhower Media Network? What do they do?
It's a group of retired military officers, others. Ben Cohen of Ben and Jerry's fame, ice cream, is the big supporter of it. And our mission is much like Quincy. We don't like stupid wars.
Well, that's a very good thing. And it's sometimes people think that if you have served in the U.S. Armed Forces, then you would be inclined toward using the military. But the opposite is actually the case, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And as a matter of fact, in my 40 years of experience in and out of the Pentagon, the State Department, and elsewhere, the people who want war the least are the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, and the people who want it the most are the State Department people.
Well, I mean, you understand. It's very understandable because the people from the armed services then have to put their life on the line. But also, when it comes to Russia and Ukraine and the entire also like assessment of what is possible and what not, it seems to me that usually restraints seems to be coming from the Pentagon. Do you share that impression?
My experience, yes, restraint grew in the Pentagon, nowhere else in the government. Powell, for example, when he was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Colin Powell, kept only one piece of paper under the glass on his very large desk. And the paper was the words of Thucydides. And translated from the Greek, it says, the one aspect of power men admire most is restraint.
Having power and not using it. That's real power. Or um so what is your how do you make sense of the Trump administration's approach towards the war in Ukraine and the larger structural conflict with Russia? What do you think the current administration is actually up to?
Well, let me take a general point first, rising from your initial question. This administration and this Pentagon are becoming very, very different from what I just said.
Mm.
They're becoming a Pentagon and an administration that likes war, likes killing people on the high seas in total violation of international law, for example. So this administration is off the charts in terms of routine, if you will, and the way people normally feel about the use of force. Trump's a liar. He's an outright liar. He has told his entire MAGA group that he's against war, that he doesn't like war, and yet he relishes killing people. And he relishes especially killing people through proxies. All we have to do is look at Ukraine and look at Gaza to see that in, vivid detail. So this is a very different administration. I've served 6 presidents. I've known every president since 1950, really, and I have never seen anything like this. So that's my general comment. Nothing has compared to this. Not Nixon, not Johnson, not JFK, certainly not Eisenhower. No president has ever been as incompetent and as intent on killing people domestically and overseas than this president and this administration.
How do you Why do you think that is? Because the first Trump administration, one of the things that he didn't do was he didn't start a new war. And there was this moment in 2019 that the issues with the tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, when things really boiled up in the summer of 2019, and there was a US drone shot down, and apparently there were already talks of hitting the Iranians directly, and the administration didn't do that. But he killed Soleimani, yeah, of course, then in that winter, the next winter. But no large war. And now the second administration seems to be going a completely different route, as you said, Venezuela and shooting at ships and saying like they were smuggling, therefore we can kill them, which is absolutely not true. That's just not how international law works. And of course, all the decapitation strikes, which Mr. Trump is very proud of saying, yeah, we were part of that. We helped the Israelis to kill a lot of people while pretending to be negotiating. Why this change?
In his first term, Trump was not non-warrior at all. Trump set up the conditions, and Biden continued those conditions for the war in Ukraine. So this is not a president who doesn't like war. This is a president who comes at it from different directions than most presidents when he does do it. And what that different direction is most assertively is proxies. He's using proxies. He's using Ukraine. He's using Georgia, or trying to. He's using Armenia and Azerbaijan, or trying to. He tried to use Romania. He's using other countries in NATO to do things that shouldn't be being done right now, not if you don't want a global war. And does he know about it? I'll be the first to admit that it may be Mossad, MI6, CIA doing a lot of this. It may be Hegseth doing it. It may be others in the administration doing it. Indeed, it may even be other people in NATO doing it. And maybe Trump is so incompetent, he doesn't even know what's going on, because he doesn't take National Security Council briefings. He doesn't have a national security advisor who looks over by job description, looks over the entire interagency, particularly defense and state, and coordinates policy for it. He doesn't have one. Rubio is too busy attacking people in Latin America, or trying to attack people in Latin America. He's not even a good Secretary of State, and he's not a national security advisor. So who is coordinating policy in the Trump administration? On Monday, it's the Chief of Staff. On Tuesday, it's Stephen Miller. On Wednesday, it's Hegseth. On Thursday, it's Rubio. You take your pick. Secretary of the Treasury weighs in every now and then. Director of the FBI weighs in every now and then. There is no coordinated policy coming out of the Trump administration. There's just support for wars that he helped start in his first administration. Biden augmented majorly, and the most prominent of them are, of course, the wars in the Levant, and we're getting ready to extend that to Iran very shortly. I'll predict it'll happen before Thanksgiving. And maybe even further if Netanyahu gets a real burr in his saddle. So anybody who wants to tell me that Trump doesn't like war, or doesn't enter wars, or doesn't start wars, or doesn't relish wars, has got to tell me what they're talking about, because it just isn't in the proof of the pudding.
No.
And there's, as I said, there is no coordination of policy in this administration. Zero. It just flows out of Trump's mouth when he tweets or does whatever he does. But the basic things that are happening underneath him, and they're happening with the various people who are doing what they can while he is oblivious to what they're doing. Or he's orchestrating the whole thing all on his own, and it's really kind of hideous what he's doing, both domestically and internationally. But I don't believe that for a minute. This man is incapable of orchestrating action on his own. So what's happening is we have chaos. We have chaos from one end of the administration to the other.
I mean, the White House must be a chaotic place, even under a well-organized president and administration, just because it is so many. No?
Not true. I served George H.W. Bush, and Brent Scowcroft is his national security advisor. Colin Powell is his chairman. Dick Cheney is his secretary of defense. Jim Baker is secretary of state. It was as smooth a decision-making process. I've taught this for 16 years on 3 campuses. It was the smoothest decision-making process I've ever seen. And then along came Bill Clinton, and I served that president the first year of his administration. It was total chaos. Now, Clinton did get his act together by the second term, but it makes a hell of a difference who's in the so-called group of 6, group of 7, group of 8. The people who actually do what the 1947-48 National Security Act says they are supposed to do. That is to say, they run the National Security Council in lieu of cabinet government anytime they're doing something that is strategic, that is security-based or foreign policy-based. The lead accordingly will be the State Department or the Pentagon, depending on which is the heaviest weight in the mixture, so to speak. And the National Security Advisor coordinates the whole thing. Now, I saw the best administration we've had since World War II outside of Eisenhower. And Eisenhower started and molded this process because the act was so fresh at that time. But he's the one who started the process and made it into what it is today. H.W. Bush was Eisenhower reincarnated. You could not argue with the experience the man had. I mean, look at it. He was 8 years Ronald Reagan's vice president. He was ambassador to China. He was director of the CIA. He was head of the RNC. There was hardly anything H.W. Bush. Plus, he was in World War II as a 17, 18-year-old fighter pilot in the Pacific. I mean, this is a man who knew what he was doing when he came to the presidency. 8 years as vice president. And I know he ran those 2 administrations, not Ronald Reagan. Everybody thinks Ronald Reagan was the greatest thing since sliced bread. H.W. Bush was the man doing all the dirty work in that administration, both those administrations. So I know what a good president looks like. I know what a mediocre one looks like. Bill Clinton, Obama, a little bit better than Clinton, but not a whole lot better. And I know what a really unbelievably incompetent president looks like. And that's Donald Trump.
So would you say like part of the problem that we're seeing now is this disorganization, the chaos that stems from incompetence because the administration is not able to structure itself and hence have a proper information flow up and down? Because that's then slightly different than from him, being lusting for blood and wanting to do war. But it seems to me to be like both, probably. I mean, he seems to enjoy this kind of power, but at the same time, the decision making is now, I mean, anyone's guess of how policy is being made.
It is. I don't think policy is being made. I do not think policy is being made. And if policy is not made, strategy can't be designed because you have to have a policy in order to build a strategy to implement that policy.
Yes.
And then you have to have operations underneath that strategy. None of that is happening. None of it's happening. What happens is Trump gets up in the morning or sometime in the night or whatever, and he says, I think we ought to send some troops into Memphis. I think we ought to send some troops to the southern border. I think we ought to do this. I think we ought to do that. And then the bureaucracy reacts to that. And maybe he remembers what he said for them to do 2 days later when they come back to try to tell him what the results of what he said are. This is bizarre. This administration is totally bizarre. He gets up and says before the inauguration, and then after the inauguration, he repeats it, that he's going to stop the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. Or at least he's going to stop the war in Ukraine. He's done nothing. Absolutely nothing. He's made it worse. He's done nothing. So how do you judge a man like that who tells you he's going to stop a war and then does nothing?
So what was the Alaska summit about in your view?
Nothing. Putin has said it was about nothing. They accomplished nothing. Zero. I thought they at least accomplished both men recognizing both men's concern over nuclear weapons. We're in a treatyless world now with respect to nuclear weapons, except for New START, which goes out in February of 26. And Putin was eager to take the discussions to that level, and even offered to bring Xi Jinping in and make sure that the three nuclear weapons owning states that are most prominent and have the most warheads were going to talk about not only New START, but a new treaty regime, and maybe even multilateralize it so that we would bring all of the 9 nuclear weapons owning states into it, kicking and screaming if necessary, like that bastard state in the Eastern Mediterranean, Israel. I'd drag them in and put their face in a nuclear weapon and make them become a part of the non-proliferation treaty and a part of the treaty regime. Got to do that. Got to do it with Pakistan and India, too. It won't be that hard with them. But with Bibi Netanyahu, it'll be well nigh impossible. We probably have to slap him upside the face 3 or 4 times to get him to come into it. But Putin wanted to do that, and Trump just snuffed him off. So we accomplished nothing in Alaska, absolutely nothing. And Sergei Lavrov and Vladimir Putin have been saying that ever since.
Why do you think do you think it is there's still something in it for the Russians that the United States, that Donald Trump at least seems not to be listening to the Europeans very much? Because it strikes me that the Europeans are even like the Europeans are insane at this point of the kind of risk that they are willing to take just in order to cater to their Russophobia. And Donald Trump now seems to just let them talk. But what's your assessment with the Europeans?
I think they're catering as much to their vassal nature to the United States as they are to their Russophobia, as you put. I think plenty of people like Macron and Starmer and Merz do have a degree of hatred for Russia, but I don't think their people do. And I think we're going to see 3 governments gone within the next 13, 14 months. Macron is a dead man walking right now. Starmer is too. And Merz will get there very shortly because he can't hold this coalition together with what's happening in Germany. He's just not the man for the job. So we're going to have the 3 big people in Europe, and probably van der Leyen too, going within the next 6 to 8 months. What that's going to do, though, I don't know. I think it's going to throw Europe into turmoil, and it's certainly going to end NATO as NATO is presently conceived. But that is a problem. There's no question about it. But Trump has not done anything but exacerbate that problem, because on Monday he says, okay, it's over to the Europeans, but we'll supply them fully. You know how long it would take us to build up the goods to supply them fully? Probably 4 to 6 years, because we bled everything down. We've given Israel so much that if we had to fight somebody really today, we'd have to give up at the start of the war. We don't have much left because we've given such enormous amounts of weaponry away. And we don't have a defense industrial base that can build things rapidly like Russia does. We would take 4 to 6 years just to build what Russia builds in 1 year, what China builds in 6 months. So we are sitting on a real disaster should anything arise in the world that we really have to take on, which is why I say it is going to be absolutely existential for the empire if Bibi pulls us into war with Iran, because the Iran of today is not the Iran of yesterday. Yep. And they proved it in the 12-day beautiful war. They shellacked Israel. They flat shellacked Israel in those 12 days. Now, Netanyahu hid it, covered it up, didn't let a lot of the information out, even for bad people to leave Israel. If he hadn't done that, he'd lost another 1 million Jews out of Israel. He's already lost 1 million Jews out of Israel. He'd lose another 1 million if he hadn't battened down the hatches and told everybody they can't go anywhere. So Israel is in really dire circumstances right now. And if they do, and I think they are going to, start the war again with Iran, they're going to expect, because they're going to be defeated, they're going to expect us to come haul their bacon out of the fire. They're going to expect us to effect regime change in Tehran. It's going to be a 10-year war, $2 trillion, lots of blood spent, and it'll look sort of like Afghanistan at the end of the 10 years. So that's the end of the empire in many respects, I think. very, very seriously, that's the end of the empire. We won't be the same after that. But that's where we're headed. And we're headed there not just because of Trump, mostly because of every president since George H.W. Bush, who has screwed up everything badly. But Trump has come along at a time when it is absolutely essential that these mistakes be corrected and we start remedying the things we've done so badly since H.W. Bush. And we're not doing it. Instead, we've got the most incompetent administration in that time period. So, I mean, what are you going to do? How are you supposed to think about the fate of the empire at this particular juncture? We're standing next to a very, very deep abyss. We're on the edge, and Trump is going to push us over.
This is
Not nice for me to contemplate. I mean, I'm at the end of my life. I've dedicated my life to my country, and this baboon is going to take us into that abyss.
We have also never had a great power or even a superpower at the brink of this kind of, well, no, that's not true. The Soviet Union went over the cliff, actually collapsed, and it managed itself. It managed the transformation. Now, the United States, I mean, we're looking at a completely different animal in terms of where it stands. So if the empire, if the structural influence over the world completely changes, what do you think will that do to the way the US then approaches foreign policy?
Well, if Trump had half a brain and he had anybody in his administration with half a brain, he realized what I've been saying now for over a year is happening. We've had hundreds of empires in human history that we know about. The 3,000 years we know a lot about, the 2,000 years we know a little about, total 5,000, hundreds of empires. None are here today. Not a single one. The only one here today is us. And a borning is one on the other side of the world. Now, what's happening is a reversal of what happened in the past 2,500 years. The power was in the East, and it spread across through Europe and ultimately to the New World. And all that power left the East and went to the West. It's apogee America. George III should never have let us go. Now the situation is reversing. Now the situation is the power is going back to the East. If you've been to Samarkand, if you've been to Dushanbe, if you've been to any of the Central Asian cities, if you've been to Shanghai, my God, you know where the number one economic force in the world is. And now it's allied with Russia and India, essentially through our strategic stupidity. So now you've got 2/3 of the world opposed to the empire. So what are we doing? What are the people behind Trump, the billionaires, the JP Morgan types, the Rothschild types? What are they doing? They're trying to stop this. And they're trying to use these proxy wars to do that. And they've got proxy wars going all the way from Murmansk. Yes, if you've noticed what we've been doing around Murmansk lately, very unusual activity out there, all the way down through the Baltic, where we had a general actually say that he could take Kaliningrad in a day or two with his airborne forces. Preposterous statement. All the way down through Ukraine, down through Azerbaijan and Armenia. Don't leave out Georgia, where we're trying to overthrow the government there, and on down into the Levant and ultimately to the Southern Belt Road Initiative with its railroad already up and running, Iran. So we're trying to stop this inexorable flow of power back to the East, with the magnet being China, away from us. And we will do anything to stop that. I fear we will use nuclear weapons at the end of the day to stop that. But that's what we're doing. But Trump flowed into this without any knowledge whatsoever of what I've just said. The man doesn't know history. He couldn't tell you the name of 2 empires in the world, probably. There have been hundreds. He wouldn't know the Eastern from the Western Roman Empire. He wouldn't know that one of them lasted a long time and evolved into the Byzantine. He wouldn't know that Genghis Khan lived or that the Persians had one of the greatest empires in the history of the world. He wouldn't know any. He does not do history. So he has no conception of, for example, when he talks to a man like Putin or a man like Sergei Lavrov, who does know history and knows history quite well, particularly that history pertaining to Russia. So this is a set of circumstances that I don't think, unless you want to go back to maybe the Western Roman Empire and the really bad series of emperors they had towards the end, I would say that it wasn't even as bad for them as it is for us right now. We have an incompetent Supreme Court, an incompetent legislature, and an incompetent president. How could it be any worse? And we have people who are dumber than mud and don't know any of this and just go day to day on their lives and don't worry about it. And their country is going to hell in a handbag.
And then you have you have a money elite and you have influence bought through money from different directions through this lobbying process.
They will jump ship. Watch the Rothschild, check the Rothschilds, the JP Morgans, all these people. I call them the Davos crowd. Doug McGregor calls them the globalists. Globalists, neoconservatives, the Davos crowd, whatever you want to call them. There are people like Mertz, for example, who came from BlackRock. They will jump ship if they are absolutely convinced that it's going the other way and it's irretrievable. They will jump ship. But they will try their damnedest to stop it from happening. And that's what they're doing right now. This is not something Trump intuits even. Certainly not anything he intellectualizes. He has no conception of what I'm talking about. He has no conception that the world is turning over under his feet, and he's exacerbating the turnover badly. But these people behind him do. These billionaires do. These incredibly wealthy people who really drive the world. They do. And so do the ones in Russia and the ones in China and the ones in India. And they form this kind of whirl cloud of money that keeps everything ticking over, if you will, but mostly ticking over to their benefit.
Yeah.
But they will jump ship if it happens inexorably, which it is, and they find that they can't sustain themselves in the West anymore. They'll be somewhere else.
But before they do that, they try to ruin and wreck everything and double down because they never actually learn, right? Double and triple down. And we see right now, again, you said Iran. A lot of people are expecting, and I would like to ask you why you're expecting before Thanksgiving, like a war with Iran. And we see now part of the fleet in front of Venezuela. It's just a place where there's really no need whatsoever in order to use military power. Why? I mean, what are you expecting in these theaters from the mindset of these relatively insane people who think that if something has failed, we just do more of the same and at some point we'll get our way?
Well, there are excuses, reasons, I hesitate to call them that, but for everything basically that's going on with regard to the use of force or the near use of force right now. Take Venezuela, for example. The reason for that is one of these people, one of the preeminent members of this group, I wouldn't comparing with the Rothschild or J.P. Morgan, but I'd put him very close, is Charles Koch. And the reason we're doing what we're doing in Venezuela and making fools of ourselves with Nicolas Maduro and Venezuelans in general is we want his oil. And the reason we want his oil is Charles Koch, the multi-billionaire who's been screwing this country for about 35 years. Read Nancy McLean's book, Democracy and Change. Charles Koch owns the heavy sulfur content oil refining in the United States. And he had a deal with Hugo Chavez, and he was still getting plenty of high sulfur content oil to refine and making millions of dollars. But now Nicolas Maduro canceled him out. So he's getting none. So he's bringing every bit of pressure his multi-billions of dollars will allow him to bring on Rubio. And Rubio is very compliant. Rubio wants to take on the whole Latin American scene anyway and reduce them to American trolls. That's Rubio's desire. Rubio's from Cuba, remember? I had a protocol house meeting with Ricardo Alarcon. 2:00 in the morning, he's drinking scotch of all things, and we're drinking his very fine rum. And we made some comment about Rubio and about other Cubans in Florida, and Ricardo Alarcon looked at us and said, "You don't have to tell me about them. I know them. They're Cubans." What he meant by that was that they were, they were like Batista. They were the Cubans that Fidel kicked out of Cuba. And he was right. He's right. These people think Latin America should be our vassal. They think Lula should be gone from Brazil because he actually has a spine. He actually has a backbone. He actually cares about Brazilians. They think Bolsonaro should be out of prison and back in charge in Brasilia because he will be compliant with the United States' wishes. That's what Rubio wants. He wants leaders all over Latin America, Nicaragua, to Colombia, Argentina, Chile. He wants leaders all over Latin America to bow and scrape to the empire. That's what he wants. And behind that are people like Koch and others who want to rape, pillage, and plunder like they've done for the past 150 years in the Southern Hemisphere. The Monroe Doctrine was a statement that the United States would pillage where it wanted to. Thank you very much. And don't bother me while I'm pillaging Europe. That's what the Monroe Doctrine was.
This is now a 19th century mindset of exploitation and domination in a 21st century multipolar setup in which the balance of power is just utterly different. So it's gonna run, and it is running in front of our eyes against brick walls time and again. The question is, will it all blow up even bigger? And the biggest threat to that is, of course, Israel, which is
the greatest colonial power in the world right now.
Has so much impunity. It can literally do whatever it wants. It can literally implement a genocide for 2 years, and the Europeans and Americans, the political processes still back it up. And it can blow up an ally of the United States. It can attack Qatar. Isn't that kind of a watershed? I mean, we just haven't seen it. I mean, it's the next step, and it makes sense for Israel. It's just another one. Incredible.
It may be a watershed, though, a minor one, but a minor one that will make a difference, because what you have now is you have Riyadh coming closer and closer to Iran. Qatar already was. The Turks had already helped Qatar when Riyadh was being obstreperous towards them a few years ago. Turks actually sent troops. Now you've got all of them seeking a rapprochement with Tehran and a better coordinated defense structure and security structure amongst them, and talking to Erdogan, with Qatar telling Erdogan that another 200 or 300 billion will be coming your way. And you need to be very, very willing to do the kinds of things we need you to do, one of which might be to take Israel on. So it's shaping up. People say, well, the Arabs are feckless. They could never do anything. They could never have any kind of alliance that would be any formidable thing with regard to Israel anyway, blah, 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 blah. They're not looking at Israel. Israel is tied down massively on 6 fronts. Israel has disaster shaping up in its own ranks. I'm just looking at the reports this morning from the IDF. The IDF puts out some really good reports on things like post-traumatic stress, suicide, reservists who aren't showing up, and so forth. Bibi so far has not been able to stem that. It actually gets out. Sometimes you can even find it in Haaretz. It's a disaster right now. The number of troops that aren't showing up, the number of troops that are committing suicide, the number of troops that have post-traumatic stress, the number of troops that are essentially saying, officers, not just enlisted, officers say, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm out of here. Now, Netanyahu's trying to cap it as best he can, but he's not doing it very well.
So you think they will try to go to war with Iran?
I do, because that's the only solution Netanyahu has. He can't back up. That's the reason he bombed Doha, because he did not want a ceasefire. He cannot have a ceasefire. He cannot back up. He can only go forward. He can only extend, enlarge, and deepen his abyss. That's what he's got to do. And he's got to, in the case of Iran, bring the United States in, because he knows damn well he can't defeat Iran. And he's going to be way out on a limb, and someone's going to chop it off. But we will come.
And the U.S. will go, right? I mean, 250 state lawmakers recently in Israel, and Rubio in Israel, and everybody doing this very humiliating thing of putting on the kippah and going to the wall. And I mean, they're not Jews, right? They're not Jews, but they do these. But then the Zionists are not.
They're not Christians either.
Yeah,
I've been a Christian all my life. They're not Christians.
Yeah,
There's some weird combination of whatever, but they're not Christians. They don't do what Christians are supposed to do.
The USA will go, right? If Israel pushes the button and they start something that they can't win, the USA, in the end, they will say they will go, right?
We'll go, and we'll find out that we can't handle it. This is not Iraq. This is not desert. This is really tough mountain country. Alexander the Great almost died in Iran. It is tough country. I've war planned for it. I war planned to fight the Soviets in the Zagros Mountains, for example, because when the Soviets moved into Afghanistan initially, we thought, nah, there's no way they're going to stay in Afghanistan. What do they want with Afghanistan? They're going to go for the warm water ports, something that Russia's wanted and salivated over for hundreds of years. They're going to go for Bandar Abbas and Chabahar. So we were war planning at that time. War planning, seriously war planning for fighting in Iran. And I tell you what, we came to the conclusion that we didn't want to do that. We looked at that terrain closely, cross compartment and otherwise. We looked at it and we said, we'll get beaten in that terrain. We'll get beaten by guerrilla warfare that will wind up attriting us day after day after day. Same thing that happened in Iraq, but only much more intense in Iran, because you've got much more strategic depth. You've got 90 million people, and you've got real homogeneity amongst at least 51 to 52% of them, Persian. The others are pretty much melded in too if the country is threatened like it is right now. I mean, I've never seen in my lifetime an Iran so unified as it is right now.
Right.
And what did that was the Israeli attacks and the murderous way they did it,
right.
In the middle of diplomacy.
Even a close Iranian friend over here who told me he doesn't like the regime a little bit and he would love them to be gone, told me, look, they were right. The Americans are out for us to get us. we got to stand together. And he's not Persian. He's not even Persian. Yeah. I'm still praying for some form of de-escalation and good sense in the administration in Washington. This was not very encouraging in that sense, but we need to face reality. Colonel Wilkerson, people who want to read from you, where's the best place to go to find your analysis?
The Eisenhower Media Network website. Just Google Eisenhower Media Network.
I'll put it into the description of this video below here. And Colonel Wilkerson, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry it's so grim, but it is grim.
It's a very honest assessment. And we all appreciate your honest assessment, Colonel. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.